walkthrough, we're talking about the basic blink. First thing you'll notice is just more details on the USB cable. Since this is the first time you're hooking it up, um, this is the most basic USB cable, the USB AB cable. Couple things. It's universal series bus. It was invented back in the 90s so that we could connect laptops and computers to pretty much any device, printers and other things. Um, Almost every computer has a USB port except for some devices like the old MacBook Pros didn't. Nowadays you have to have some of the adapters, the lightning adapters, to make those work. But every Arduino build requires this type A, type B connector so that we can upload the programs from the laptop to the device. There is something called a serial port, but we won't worry about that anytime soon. The other thing is this USB AB cord is also powering it. So no longer will we need our battery holder, but this will use the laptop to supply 5 volts of DC current straight up to the Arduino. Scroll down a little bit farther, and you'll see a whole thing on the Arduino Uno and all the different components of it. So I'm just going to kind of go around here clockwise, starting with the reset button. There's a button on the Arduino which will restart the program. Anytime you hit that, typically lights will flash, especially this LED built-in light, which is connected to 13. So anytime you want to use pin 13, you can also type in built-in LED, which our first programs will do that. And this built-in LED, literally built in right here, is connected to 13. So anytime you make 13 turn on or off, you'll see that light turn on or off. Going between 13 all the way down to 0, these are digital pins. It's a basic way for us to program or do things with the Arduino. All of those do is turn on or off. They're either pushing current out or they're not. And that's how they make other devices work. Pulse width modulation is if we need to vary how much voltage is going through, we can do that. The on button here, the on light. This is important. Just lets you know that the LED or this Arduino is on. In case you ever have problems, if that light's not coming on when you plug it in, then you have some sort of power problem, or maybe you fried the Arduino, which can happen. So be careful. This in-circuit serial programmer, which as I was just saying about a minute ago, is a way for us to program if we don't want to plug in a USB cord in. We won't worry about that at all in this manual. The integrated circuit chip, this is kind of like the motherboard of the whole thing. This is what makes it work. That's what's going to make all the processes, and it's doing like a billion off and on switches every second. The analog pins here, A0 to A5, is kind of like the digital pins above, but in this case we can vary how much voltage is going through on a different scale. G and D stands for ground, and that's like the negative part of the circuit. You'll notice there's only 3 on here, so if you need more than 3 grounds, you're going to have to use a breadboard to do that, which we'll talk about later. There's pins next to it here, 5 volt, 3.3 volts, and so we'll talk about those as they come up. The DC jack here is if you want to program it or want to power your board without the USB cable, you would use this. When we make a robot or if we want to make something that we don't have to plug into our laptop all the time, that's when we switch to the DC jack and just use batteries. Going down, your basic first blinking program is just going to take the Arduino board with an LED. We won't always do it this way, but for starting out, it's very simple. Anytime you see a curved end on the LED, that or a bent end, that's the positive end, that's the longer end. So this is what our first build's going to look like. And when you plug it into the laptop, even if you don't have anything programmed yet, your light's probably going to come on and blink. And that's just because it's in this 13 pin and the LED built in, which the first time using the Arduino tends to be turned on already. That's the original program. From there, the next part of this is just how to install the Arduino IDE, the integrated development environment, on the laptop itself. This for Microsoft's only. If you want to do Mac, you would just choose a different version. And if you even have a Linux computer, then I don't even have to tell you about this because you already know. You just run through those different software. Nowadays in these programs, I'm tending to use the online version because a lot of people are using Chromebooks or different devices, and you need to keep your own programs for the future and access them from other laptops. So the online web editor is what we'll use most often, but it's the same as what we have here. So let's get started. Looking at build 2, this is actually your first time programming, probably, at least with this software and this setup. So a couple things we need to point out here. Starting from the top left, this yellow button here, it's not typically yellow unless you click it, is a compiling button. So what this is doing is it's checking the code for errors and then translating into machine code, which is binary, so zeros and ones. You'll see the code right now. We can't actually read this because it's written in English, but that's not machine code. Once we hit upload, it's installing that machine code, the binary, the zeros and ones, on the laptop, or sorry, on the Arduino, on the processor so that it runs the program. Whenever you save the program, it's going to give a name of it. If you want to save it, just go to File and Save As. Void setup, this is going to be on every single program that you use, and also void loop will as well. In this program, we're not using the void loop at all. The first thing you're going to type in is pin mode, and we're going to assign it to LED built-in, which is that pin 13 I told you about. When we say LED built-in, we mean that 13. Output means we're going to tell that Arduino to do something, whether that's to, in this case, control an LED. And other things, we can control printers, LCDs, monitors, motors, and different things. If we were using an input instead of an output, this would be if we're using some sort of switch, some sort of sensor to take in data. Think motion sensor in that case. Going on from there, the next thing we're going to use is digital write. We're still using that LED built in, so we're talking about pin 13. And then instead of low or high, we're using the word high, and that means to turn things on or off. Instead of the words on or off, we're using high. If we want to turn it off, we use the word low. It just basically means high voltage or no voltage. Something really important to notice are these two backslashes here, which comment it out. So you'll notice this whole line turned gray, which means that code is not being executed at all. If we take those comments out, then it would turn orange and blue, and then that code would actually run. Every program will have this void loop, whether we use it or not. In this case, we're not using it, but it's still there. Couple of things to notice, you'll see these brackets. These brackets are so important. If you don't have them, the program will not work. It'll give you some sort of error. This is all the things I just said. One other thing to point out is you're programming in C and C++, which are some of the most popular programming languages in the world right now. And it's great because you can read it. It's so user-friendly. Once you understand what the code is saying, you can look at it, anybody's program, and understand what they're trying to do. This last page is about troubleshooting. I'm only going to talk about this first part right now. The most common problem you'll see is this problem uploading to board. The way to do that is oftentimes when you're plugging a USB cable into your laptop, there are a lot of different ports on there. And we need to be able to tell that Arduino and the laptop which ones to use and which port that the Arduino is connected to. So when you see this error, the most typical way to fix it is to go to Tools and then click on the word port and then choose the right COM port that comes up. Typically the one that shows up with the number next to it is yours. Now, if you're using the online web editor, we'll talk about this in detail on the coding side, and if you're using a different system at all, it'll look a little differently. But you'll have to troubleshoot some problems, and this sheet here can help you. Yes, one more other thing to point out is the most common problem that you guys will face is forgetting your semicolons. If you forget a semicolon, it's like forgetting a period on a sentence. It won't work. Computers are very picky. If punctuation is not right, if the syntax or the grammar is not correct, the computer can't read it. The machine won't understand it. So you're going to be frustrated at first. Once you understand that it just has to be perfect, you will learn to write it that way. You'll learn to be able to find these errors pretty quickly, and then you'll have no problem with it.